Hey everybody, it's Rajesh here.
And Tane here.
Welcome to our podcast, Baskets of Knowledge, Chats with a Difference. In our podcast, we invite guests from around the country and around the world to talk about how they got to where they're at the moment. It's about a journey, it's about an experience, it's about their life. Kia ora koutou, everybody. Welcome to another episode of Baskets of Knowledge. For those of you that join us every week, thank you for joining us. For anyone that's new, welcome to this amazing journey, and hopefully you hang around and stay for as long as you want, because we love having you people on the podcast. Another apology from Tane today. He can't join us because he's away doing some pretty cool things with his rugby league board. So it's just me today, and obviously our guest who I'll introduce in a bit. And as every week, I try and think about a reflection of something I've learned since our last podcast. And my reflection that I've done a post on, or going to do a post tomorrow about, is on anti-goals. So let me premise this. In our lives, we are always driven towards goals. We hear about create SMART goals, specific, measurable, all that, have a goal, or all that kind of stuff there. And that's all good. That's fantastic. And I believe in that there. But over the weekend, or actually with the last podcast, which you would have heard Priya on the podcast, she spoke about things that she heard from other people that she didn't want to do. And that made me think about, how about we have this context of anti-goals as opposed to goals? So sometimes by reframing the fact that you don't want to do something, you end up doing the thing that you want to do. So, my challenge to you out there as you're listening, don't think about the things that you do want to do all the time. Think about the things that you don't want to do as well. And they can reframe the way you think about goals. Because sometimes when you have goals, you have emotions attached to them. Then you don't achieve your goal, you're like, oh, you get sad. There's emotions. But an anti-goal is very, very different, because you're always going to be moving in a forward direction. Because even if you don't achieve the anti-goal, you're still going to achieve it, if that makes sense. Yeah, so that's my pondering over the last few days, I guess. And for those of you that are listening to us, at some point there'll be a LinkedIn post about that which pops out. So have a read of that there. But hey, we're not here to talk about anti-goals. You can have a look at that yourself. As you know, we scour the country, we scour the world to find people that are amazing to jump on the podcast. And as you know, we think everyone's amazing. We think everyone's got an amazing story to tell. And we love to do this all day, every day. But as you know, we don't have any funding, but that's all good. We don't do this for the money. We do it for the mahi and the love. Today's guest, I'm very, very privileged and very, very honored. This is a person that I haven't met in person, but I have watched the work that they do from behind the scenes during my time at the University of Otago. Not just watching their work, but the impact that they've had, not just at the university, but also in their local community. And over the last few weeks and last few months, they have been recognized for the mahi that they do and the work they do because of the awards they've gotten. And this person is crazy humble, so I'm sure they won't talk too much about it, but I'll make them talk about it. But it is a testament that it doesn't matter how old you are, how young you are, if there's something you're passionate about and something that really drives you, that things can be done. And as you've seen in with other guests, this does happen. So it is my privilege, my honor, and my real blessing to invite to our podcast, Tara Shepherd. Kia ora and welcome to our podcast, Tara.
Kia ora koutou. Thank you so much. That's very, very kind. Yeah, I'm just happy to be here.
No, beautiful, Tara. Before I even say anything, as we said before the podcast, congratulations. You've just achieved one milestone by completing your undergrad degree. How does that feel?
Yeah, it's insane. I cannot believe that it's over. I guess this means that I have to pre-order a bouquet for graduation, which I didn't know was a thing. So yeah, if anyone's listening and is going to graduate sometime soon, get in quick. From what I've heard, there is quite the line.
I had no idea. Pre-order your bouquet. There we go. That's who would have known. But yeah, well done. And I guess, Tara, for our listeners who know nothing about you, who's Tara and where is Tara at this point in her life as we speak today?
Yeah, I think this is a really interesting moment in my life because I am transitioning out of being a student for the first time and really kind of refocusing and rethinking about what matters to me. So I've been an advocate since I was 5, so that means I've kind of been in the business for about 17 years for students and people with disabilities around me. And as I'm moving out of student life, I'm moving out of those positions around, student advocacy, which I'm really excited to see those, that mahi continue. It's about legacy building and longevity, not about the individual yourself. So for me, I'm actually kind of really excited. Like, I've spent all day kind of unpacking my things and reorganizing our house for me and for my fiance, which is actually also really cool. We've been engaged for almost 2 months, so yeah, so that's another phase in my life. But yeah, I'm kind of trying to reimagine what actually brings me joy, because I always talk about how I have this toxic relationship with my Google Calendar, which can be a good and bad thing, but yeah, what does bring me joy? So that's kind of where I'm at the moment. Yeah.
And that's such a beautiful way to summarize inverted commas where you are at this point in time. But even in that summary, there's so much for us to delve into. And I guess the first thing I want to talk about is at the age of 5. Most people at the age of 5 are so oblivious about the world. They just, I don't know I don't know. I can't remember what I was doing at the age of 5. What is it at the age of 5 that got you into advocacy as at such a young age? And when I was doing my reading about you, it was to do with young people at Ronald McDonald House. Is that correct? Or yeah, what is the driver behind that for you at the age of 5? But in context, 5, not 15, but 5.
Yeah. So I had been going over to Christchurch quite regularly for specialist appointments because I was born with my disabilities. So it was to do with my eye and also to do with my hand. And I was diagnosed with other conditions also later on. But I was finally, Ronald McDonald House Christchurch kind of was created when I was around 4 or 5 when I started going. And it was there that I was meeting a lot of children who I wouldn't meet again. And I'm so sorry if that sounds so morbid, but I met these incredible kids that would have so much fun, would be reading books, and there was like this really cool toy computer I remember playing on, and it was really cool because you can go back to this house where it's not about the hospital appointments. It's not about why you're there. It's just about connecting with children, connecting with others. And to me, that was so powerful because I spent quite a few birthdays over there over at Ronald McDonald House. And every time, I'd get a cake and I'd get this card and it'd be so cool. But around 5, I was kind of told by my parents that there was quite a high statistic of West Coast kids, especially needing to go over to Christchurch for those specialist appointments. And I think around the time it was about 30%. I can't remember for sure. I probably have to dive through the archives of the amount of kids that were going over from the West Coast. And it was then I was like, okay, so I have this voice, I do have these conditions, but at the end of the day, my conditions are not worse off than the next person who just deserves to be able to go to this house that everything's prepared and catered for, and they can just be a kid for one night or one day or a week. It doesn't matter how long they're there, which is so cool. So I started doing mufti days every term at my little local primary school. I can't even remember how many kids we had at that primary school, but yeah, it was Westport South School. It was such a cool school. And yeah, I was doing mufti days pretty much every term. And then when I was 8, I was asked by Ronald McDonald House Christchurch to do a speech at the opening of their extension building because they'd got enough funding to add on a little tunnel, which was also really awesome. And yeah, that was also crazy because I think too, being 5 and doing these mufti days, I was kind of pushed into public speaking, right? So to preface these mufti days, I would stand up at an assembly on Friday and kind of talk about my experience, or talk about Ronald McDonald House Christchurch and what it means for not only me, but every West Coast child who might have either a temporary or a long-term condition and need that support over there. And yeah, so it was really cool just being able to, I guess, be a kid, but also kind of see the impact it was making, because every time you would go, right, there would be something new to do because you'd have this funding coming in. Not saying that I was the main funder at all, because you had some awesome sponsors, but to me it's like this little kid, I'm like, this is so cool. You can start having like puddings for dinner, because when I started going, you would have like meals that you would do yourself, right? But
Yep.
by the time I left, every single night there would be people coming in and cooking for everyone. Like, isn't that crazy? Like, over that kind of decade and a bit, it's just changed drastically. Like, yeah, it's so cool to think on. Yeah.
That's so awesome. And well done you. But I guess one of the questions I have for you is, as a 5-year-old, when you went to your school, how did they? I don't know if you can remember this, but here you are. Da, 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 hey, school, this is what I want to do. Were they like, whoa, Tara? Or were they like, hey, Tara, this is awesome? Obviously, they must have thought it was awesome, but I'm just trying to visualize you as a 5-year-old going to your principal, going, let's do this here.
Yeah, I mean, I don't remember that conversation at all, but I think it
Yeah.
definitely helped because, yeah, my mother was a teacher at the school, so she was able to kind of create those conversations for me, or those connections for me,
Yeah.
which was really cool. But yeah,
That's pretty awesome. And I guess for people that don't know much about New Zealand, for our overseas listeners, do you want to explain to them why where you live is an important factor and variable in the story here? Because the West Coast sounds like it's pretty exotic and pretty amazing, but let's explain what the West Coast of New Zealand is like.
absolutely. Well, it's the best coast. It's the best place in the whole entire world, and
Hey.
including New Zealand. It's absolutely beautiful. If you ever want to go anywhere in New Zealand, you have to go to the west coast. You have to go up to Katamea to go to the Oparara Arches, one of the wonders of the world. The west coast is this kind of rural landscape. Our drive from Westport to Greymouth is like the third best drive in the world or something, the most scenic drive. Like it got an award a couple years ago. Um, and yeah, so for context, Westport, it had about like, I think when I was born, around like 4,000 people, and now it's up to like 6,000 real recently, which is really cool. But our whole entire district, Buller, which is in the West Coast, has about 9,000 or so people. And then the closest, like, kind of main hub is like an hour and a half away, which is Greymouth, which I mentioned. But kind of talking about that medical landscape, because it's so rural, you don't really get GPs permanently. So, not to get political or anything, but we're seeing right now a really, yeah, kind of a crisis situation here in Bulla and the West Coast in the sense of being able to get access to medical care and have like um, long-term doctors. So right now we're having, I think, GPs here that only stay for around 6 or so weeks. Like it's a kind of a contract and it's a
Wow.
contract.
Yeah.
And it's so difficult because I mean, I can't speak on it properly because I'm not as educated as I haven't really lived properly here. I've been on and off, down in Dunedin for study. But yeah, I was born here, grew up here. But yeah, at the moment there's been quite a lobby to be able to get funding and permanent staff here because of the direness of the situation. We've recently had someone pass because of a misdiagnosis, and which is quite a common occurrence, unfortunately, and also just the unavailability of staff and having the right amount of beds to have people. So, kind of talking about that, that's so important that West Coast kids and any person is able to get to Christchurch, which is the place, and mainly the South Island, that has all the specialists, which at the end of the day is about 4.5 hours away from Westport. 4.5 on a good day, maybe 5 on a bad day, depending winter or summer. But yeah, I hope that was kind of a good context. I'm not too
Yeah,
sure.
I think that's an important context because as you said, when you had to go to Christchurch for your treatment, and for people that don't understand what that actually means, it's a big drive, and as you said before, at winter those passes close, and you're like, okay, I actually can't get across, and it becomes an isolated community. So it's just great for context because it's not just about the health, it's also about all the other things that the education, just life. I mean, the West Coast is. I used the word at the start. It is exotic. It is very different. It's unlike anywhere else in the world that I've been to. It's really beautiful, really outstanding, but it's also very isolated. If you're looking to, I mean, if you love isolation, it's fantastic. But if you're are someone who needs people around you, it'll teach you very quickly that internal dialogues are the best dialogues you have sometimes, or the worst, depending on who you are as a person. And I love that context there because what the reason I asked that is because there was a bit of a trick question there about you speaking to your principal, but also it's a very close-knit community, so whether or not you had that conversation doesn't matter. There would have been someone observing this and being like, "Hey, we're gonna back Tara and let's give it a crack." And talking about backing Tara, I want to talk about Tara backing a community. Let's talk about, we'll skip all those years of you growing up because I'm sure there's lots of stories there. But I think one of the things that is really where your impact started being felt is when you started getting really passionate and I guess vocal about the Hector landfill. Do you want to talk about how, because I think that's when you started coming up and I mean you have your things you did, but that is the moment you're actually, this is not just about me, this is a great environment. What is the premise for that? And
Yeah,
also maybe explain to our listeners what the Hector landfill catastrophe is all about.
absolutely. So, yeah, I guess to preface, I'm really passionate about the environment. As we've said, how exotic and how isolated Westport is in some cases. It's about a 5 minute walk to the beach and 5 minute walk to the mountains. So, yeah, it's a massive range here that you can do. So I've always grown up with appreciating the nature. Like I bike around, I walk everywhere. Like it was great. But yeah, so around year 11, I was able to go to the Sir Peter Blake Trust kind of environmental
Yeah.
leadership camp. So I kind of got to connect with a lot of people there, which is so cool too, because that cohort was absolutely amazing. You recently got on a few of those people that I saw, and I was like, oh my gosh. And yeah, I can't gush enough about that cohort, even though we don't really keep in touch. But in passing, you're like, oh my gosh, I remember you when I was like year 11. Anyway, that's kind of that week of like leadership, environmental kind of knowledge training was I actually kind of understood the science behind climate change and kind of coastal erosion. Like we had some amazing people, like Jacob Anderson, I believe. I can't remember if that's his last name, but he's recently done, or he has done a few secondments down in Antarctica, and he also got his PhD, I believe, at Otago. And I just remember being a year 11 kid just sitting there and listening to him. It was incredible. And then in year 12, I've always kind of been this person, like I said, who, I have a voice, so why not use it? And I was taking a social studies paper by distance, and we're kind of looking at like environmental action. We were looking a lot at the Dakota pipeline in America, and we were kind of like looking closer to home at that point. School climate had come out, and on the West Coast too. It also has a really great community mindset, but also a traditional mindset. So here you have to actually present a physical problem that people can see rather than kind of this elusive term, right? And I really appreciate that. I kind of look at challenges that way and go, how would a 60-year-old understand this, and how would a 5-year-old understand this? And I think that's a really good mindset to come into. So about halfway through my year 12, I saw a newspaper article about the Hector landfill, which is a legacy landfill. It was originally a state-owned landfill, which means that the government owned it. And I've got to have to pull out the facts here. I think it stopped. It stopped in the 1980s, if I believe correctly, maybe. But it has a lot of cladding material, a lot of asbestos, and all the nuts and bolts that haven't really been taken care of properly. But the side effect of this, right, is it's right next to the beach. So we had recently seen the Fox River disaster down in Fox Glacier around that area, where basically rugby fields of this landfill was basically just pushed into the ocean from both erosion and massive rainfall. And it was quite horrific, basically. And we were seeing this kind of mirroring situation play out in Hector, which is about 40 minutes away, 40 minutes north of Westport. And it's this really small settlement, maybe like 100 or so kind of people living there, if that. And we're also seeing that the minister at the time, who I believe was Eugenie Sage, had kind of pushed the responsibility of funding for said landfill back on the local council, which is the Bulla District Council. And it just didn't make sense to me. I'm like, why are you not helping us as a small town? We've already seen what has happened in Fox River. And I couldn't stand for it. Like, I'm like, that's ridiculous. So I was like, oh, what do I do next? I'll just start this petition. And then from that petition, I ended up getting an interview with Breakfast NZ, and I got it to also coincide with the school strike for climate. So we could kind of get that extra elevation of having both the younger generation and the older generation buy into this, real physical climate change effect that we're seeing happening with this erosion and these inundation of flooding events that we're seeing happen all over New Zealand, but has been happening for decades here on the West Coast, and we haven't had as much support as other people do now. And I couldn't stand for it. But however, it was really, really cool because about 10 months after I had started that petition, we were able to get the Provincial Growth Fund of $1 million for remediation work. So that basically meant we were able to put a seawall in between the landfill and the sea. So it's a temporary solution. But I know for a fact that there was a lot of analysis done. I'm not up to date with the current project as of today. But for waste nerds like myself, it would be a really great alternative if we were able to mine the site so you can go and take out all the material, all the harmful material, and dispose of it correctly now when, this could have, I think it was started around like the 1940s or that kind of thing. And when I say everything, like everything's in there because there was quite a few local mines by hectare. So, there's also those kind of chemicals kind of in that site, which is quite scary. But yeah.
And that's again, it's just a testament to your community driven, but even if we take with the community, it's just the fact that you, as a year 12, decided to speak up, and increasingly, a lot of people that we have in the podcast, that in the past you go, "Oh no, I'm too young to do anything." But as we've seen continuously, it doesn't matter what age you are. You have a voice. You raise the voice, and something may or may not happen. But if you just keep quiet, nothing will happen. So that's really, really, really beautiful. And in amongst all this here, so you're doing year 12, you have this year, and then you finish up school, and now you have a choice of going to university. Now, I asked this question because with my time working at the university, what we know is that a lot of coasters don't go to university for a lot of reasons, and I think, whatever the reasons are. And you're at that stage and your peers, and I'm also assuming that your year 13 class gets smaller and smaller and smaller as you go. At Buller High School would have been probably tiny by the time you get to year 13. Time to go to university. What is that like for you as you start deciding, okay, now I'm going to leave my community, which I've known all my life, to a place that is, or whatever places you are choosing to go? What is that decision process like for you?
Yeah, I don't know. I feel like university to me was always a no-brainer. Like I hadn't actually ever considered it, not considered it. And I don't even know why that is, but I come from like an interesting kind of background in the sense that one parent went to university and the other didn't, and both of them were successful in their own circumstances. So I have always had this balance of I'm not entirely an academic, right? So I really don't like writing for people and people grading it, but I can do the practical sense. And for me, I think that there is also a testament to what I do before that kind of community mindset of like, okay, I don't understand like why you want me to write about this to get this very expensive piece of paper, by the way. But I'd rather just go out and do it and see that grassroots action because it's just like a massive trickle effect. So for me, the reason why I ended up deciding to go to university is because I was like, regardless of what I'm doing outside of it, I just kind of want to prove myself a point that I can actually commit to this thing and have this kind of backing behind me. But also too, if I had to go back, I don't know if I would have picked university. I'm seeing a lot of great things come out of like vocational learning, and a lot of courses are being offered. Like I also saw Canterbury's offering this really new course about sustainability, like a sustainability degree, which would have been really cool. But there's always a chance for like a master's if I ever decide to go back, but I very much doubt it. But yeah, to me it was very difficult too because I've been quite financially independent in the sense of like growing up I very much had to kind of save for myself and save for university. And I was very lucky that I was able to get some scholarships to be able to go for my first year. But yeah, I was always very scared about a student loan. Like I didn't end up getting a student loan until last year so I've had a 4-year degree and my saving paid for my second year tuition in full, and I've always had jobs. So I've had about 7 roles this year, and not all of them pay me, but yeah, I just kind of make it work. So kind of looking at things, I've kind of worked somewhat almost full time while studying full time. I kind of take on different contracts just to kind of keep my head afloat, which, I've been very lucky with the opportunities that I've been invited into or been a part of or created for myself. But um, yeah, it's quite a big decision. And I think, too, you have to choose the university that is right for you. And once again, kind of talking about community, the University of Otago, to me, is the most community driven institution in New Zealand. It's completely residential. You live a couple blocks from your mates. Like, it's insane. You're never going to be in that circumstance ever,
Yeah.
for the rest of your life again. And, community is both my biggest value, but also my biggest flaw. So I was also a sub-warden down there for 2 years at the college that I went to, which is the largest self-contained college in all of Australasia. So that was also really cool to be a part of, but also quite tumultuous at times, especially, like growing up while studying and kind of dealing with kids your own age, right? And kind of trying to help them along the journey, which, yeah, is an also interesting dynamic, which I'm sure Tane must have also talked about too, because I think he was also a subwarden at one point. I think, was it at Arana? I can't
Tanya was
remember.
at Studham, and yeah,
Studham. Yeah.
yes, yeah, yeah.
Good college, good college.
Before we carry on, I just want us to remember it is 11/11/24, and Tara Shepherd said she's not going to do any other studies. So when you get to a PhD, we're going to come back and go, actually, remember that conversation we had all those years ago? Because I wouldn't be surprised if at some stage you go, wait a minute, I will do some further study, because you never know. You know
You
what
never know.
life throws at you. You never know. Yeah, but I love that. I love how you put that narrative, because you spoke about, as you think about the world that 20 years ago, 10 years ago, university equals success. If you become a trainee, what are you talking about? Whereas now there's so many vocational pathways being offered that actually, hey, success is not defined with a piece of paper. So that's really, really, really important to recognize, and also to validate that, hey, the world has changed quite dramatically. There's no such thing as, hey, if you do X or X plus Y equals Z, it doesn't happen anymore. But also, I'm also going to talk about community. I think community is really, really massive. And I was at Otago for 20 years, and I was a subordinate RA for a long time. And I think you cannot, what the words that you said, the community is really, really, it's really special. And you're never gonna, like you said before, once you've finished up your time there, you're never gonna have this time in your life where you have 300, 400 people that are the same age as you, just living down the road from you, doing, living the same journey, which is pretty unique. And especially, I'm guessing you were a subordinate at Unicol. I'm guessing, I'm
Yes, it
assuming.
was.
I'm
Yeah.
assuming it. I'm just name dropping because why not? So I can also understand what that was like. So yeah, so kudos to you as well. Because I think, no matter whether you're at Otago or Canterbury or Oxford or wherever you're in the world, kudos to everyone that is a subordinate RA, because it is a really challenging role, a rewarding out the window, but really challenging because you're also studying at the same time. And it's important for us to recognize that as well. And also, you said you were working as well to save. So again, kudos for you to save all that money while you can.
Yeah.
Teach me your ways, Tara. Teach me your ways.
Yeah.
Um,
Maybe we need to write a book.
exactly. Yeah. I'll wait for your book. Yeah. After you get your PhD, I'm like, look, I told you. I told you.
Uh, Tell you what, if I ever get my PhD, I'll dedicate it to this podcast.
Oh, 100%. I'll remember that there. Beautiful. But in amongst all this here, life also got a bit topsy-turvy in reality, literally, when the flooding happened over in your home district. And what is that like for you? Because that was 2021 when, as you said before, the flooding, the world, I mean, climate change is real, and we're seeing it all around us. But as you said before, the West Coast gets hammered. The West Coast, and actually now the East Coast, which is quite crazy. The Gisborne gets hammered almost every summer or summer.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, what was your were you there when that happened, or were you in Dunedin and you moved over, or what happened at that point in time?
Yeah, so July 2021 was my mid-year break between my first
Wow.
year being at uni. And at this point, because of I guess the mahi that I had done around the Hector landfill, I had kind of been brought on to the Bulla District Council during the summer period and that mid-year period to kind of work in waste management and education around recycling. So I can spit so many random facts to you about the waste levy and like how, you know, recycling works in New Zealand. And like, for example, like the glass contamination rate. So all of the glass in New Zealand has to be sent up to Auckland for it to be processed. But if you have 5% contamination, like for example, different coloured glass, it all goes to landfill and it just gets billed back to the council, which is so sad to think about because, you know, that's like a ton worth of glass. And everything would be so much easier if all of the glass that we had was the exact same colour because you're not getting any contamination. But like, that's a story for another time. But yeah, so I was back for my mid-year and I was doing some mahi once again back at the council, and I was actually meant to leave that morning that the flooding kind of began, that kind of yellow-orange warning.
Yeah.
And I actually couldn't fly out, so that was kind of sad, but, you know, I'd kind of come back to town, and both me and my boyfriend, who's now my fiance, was kind of brought on to the night shift at the emergency management centre, and I was put into welfare, and I think he was put into logistics. So we were actually talking about it yesterday. We can't remember how many hours we did that weekend, but he reckons it's around like 38 hours or something. But I'd have to go back to my timesheet, like in the sense of it could have been more than that. Yeah. There were such long nights, and in between that too, you wouldn't be getting any sleep because you'd be helping your family, like sandbagging, and then the sleep that you would be getting would be cut up because the fire alarm would be going off because we're in a small town, so all of our firefighters are volunteers too. So, you know, you'd probably have a relation or a friend who would be part of that, would be going and helping. And yeah, it was really, really surreal. So I remember it might have been the second night where we were the first people to see the footage that was taken from the helicopter that day of how extensive the flooding was. And there probably was less than 10 people in that room, and it hadn't even been given to the media yet. And you just look at this and you go, you can't see any of the houses. It is just water. And, you know, to put this also into perspective, about 20% of Westport didn't have insurance because people here, you know, it's like a low socioeconomic area. Yeah, so it's quite a dire situation in that respect. And, you know, we're looking at this, and I'm also kind of thinking about my background, kind of learning on that waste management kind of situation. And I sat there and I'm like, right, we're going to make a plan. So we wrote this plan. And, you know, we also had help, of course, the people there, logistics, kind of sitting there, I'm kind of bouncing ideas off of them, and I'm like, does this sound good? Does this sound good? Because my main priority, especially kind of going back to that waste geek in me, is we only have a transfer station here. We don't have a landfill. Our closest landfill would probably be Katamea, which is about 2 hours away. And even then, that landfill's only built for that small community.
That's right. Yeah.
So, kind of knowing that we have a transfer station, it means that dumping fees are extremely high because we're having to pay the transport costs to our landfill, our closest one, which I believe at the time, don't know if it still is McLaren's, which is in Nelson, which is still about like 2.5, 3 hours away from Westport. So I knew all of a sudden we had to make sure that dumping or the kind of collecting flood-affected waste had to be free. Like, it didn't matter. Like, we just had to, it was a health and safety risk at the end of the day. So that was kind of the thing that we kind of brainstormed around and how that would happen. So we were kind of talking about our local contractors like West Reef, and then Smart Environmental, who was in control of our transfer station down there. And then I remember the next morning, which, because, you know, I'm on night shift, my boss at the time came in, and I just handed him the piece of paper. I'm like, here it is, here's the plan. And he's like, oh, sweet, so are you going to stay on for the next couple of weeks to, like, implement this? And I'm like, well, I've just missed the first week of university. Do you still want me to be here? And he's like, absolutely. You know, you wrote this, so, like, get going. And bear in mind, I'm 19 at the time too. So I'm like, okay, sure. Because at this point, I was pretty much kind of put into that welfare manager role on night shift. You know, I was giving those reports to the managers the next day, the controllers, as the term is in the emergency management field. And yeah, so the next day after, I, got a new pair of boots paid for me so I can walk through all this kind of like, yeah, sludge that had basically happened. And I met the captain of NZDF quite quickly, who was Dan at the time, and we kind of talked about how NZDF was going to kind of support this plan. And then talking about how we're going to get the local contractors in the right position. So we were having like super early meetings every day to kind of set the scene every day of what was happening. Because it took quite a lot of planning before we could actually get all of this flood affected waste off the streets. So when we did take said flood affected waste off the streets, we took about 1,017 tonnes worth of waste, which,
Wow.
to put this into comparison, that is 9 months worth of waste for Westport that gets carted away. And we
Wow.
took that in 6 days.
6 days. That's crazy.
That's crazy. Yeah, and it was insane. And I just remember being this like little 19-year-old being like, I'm in charge of like NZDF and like these local contractors, and like they were all looking to me on my decision. Which is insane. And also I'm very thankful too, because you probably talk about ageism a lot, and that's always been a massive thing for me. Once again, I guess being a youth and kind of growing up in these spaces, but it was kind of an interesting flip for me, because I had earned this respect of a lot
Yeah.
of these colleagues and these workers and the controllers at the time, and the CEO and the mayor, that it didn't actually feel too much like ageism. It
Yeah.
was just yep,
Get the
we've
job
got a
done.
job, got
Yeah.
to do it.
Yeah.
Um, and I remember when some politicians came, they thought NZDF had wrote
Not Glenn.
the plan, and they're like, no, 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 that's Tara over there, and I was like, oh, okay. And also massive shout out to Ben Winder. Sorry, oh my gosh, am I just gonna? Oh, this better be the right name. Mr. Winder, Brendan Winder. Oh, I'm so sorry for that. Brendan Winder, he is currently the head of the emergency management over in Canterbury, but he was also in charge of the waste in the CBD of Christchurch during
Oh
the
wow.
2011
That's
earthquake.
okay. Yeah.
So we were able to get him over quite quickly, and without him, 100% this plan wouldn't have, been as successful as it was. He came in, we went on drives, we kind of analysed this plan. We talked about, the locality, because he really emphasised, the importance of having local people on the ground when implementing plans. It's not about people with expertise coming in and kind of taking over. But yeah, it was just amazing. I learned so many things around like asbestos and kind of correct way of kind of removing that, because once again, these Westport houses are so old, so they do have asbestos in them. They do have those really bad cladding materials that need to be taken away in a really particular manner. And like the cubics of being allowed to take away asbestos, like the amount you're allowed to actually take away yourself compared to the amount that you have to get like a personnel person to come in and get, like a 19-year-old is not going to know about that. So yeah, it was just a massive time of learning, but yeah, also this really anxiety driven time that I never thought that I would ever reflect on it in such a positive manner. And today I do, because it really built, I guess, the way that I analyze kind of a challenge and how to connect with others, and able to convey messages once again, to that range of demographics. Yeah, it was an insane time, but also a very grateful and giving time. Yeah.
How crazy if you had gone to that flight there was what happened. If you had caught that flight, a whole different path would happen on right? Isn't that how crazy
Yeah,
how that happens?
exactly. Everything happens for a reason, right? So,
Yeah, yeah, so they say exactly, yeah. And
yeah.
that's really awesome that in the time of need, as it were, nobody cared about how old you were. They just like, all right, cool, let's just get the job done. You wrote this plan here, you and your fiance were like, yeah, let's get it done. Who cares about university? This is real, this is our community, you can see it, and yeah, awesome work, but also, not to downplay the fact that there were other people as well that helped make this happen as well. You are one of many, but without you running that plan, the meaning might have just been a bit lost. So kudos to you. And You've spoken yourself about you mentioned this twice that you're a waste nerd, which is beautiful, and we love waste and we love nerds, so we love waste nerds, which is great. But also let's not also forget the other hat that you wear, which is something that you wear every single day, is the fact that you're an advocate for students with disabilities. This is something that I know you're really big about and passionate about. So here you are, waste, 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 and then you get over to university and actually, hey, we've got students that live in rural communities that have a disability. Let's try and have a voice for them. And how did you get? Obviously, not obviously, we spoke about it when you're 5 years old, but now
Mm.
here you are as a 19 or 20-year-old now, where you're seeing the real discrepancies of education for those that have disabilities. And what is that like for you as you started that advocacy
Yeah,
journey?
100%. So I think, not to backtrack, but
Let's
I have to
backtrack,
remember.
backtrack away. It's all
Backtrack
good.
away. Okay. So COVID 2020.
Yeah.
Yep, the the doom and gloom, the year that we always end up coming back to. Um, right before 2020, I had applied to be part of a youth advisory group for the Minister of Education, which was the Honourable Minister Hipkins at the time, with the Ministry for Education. And we'd kind of come in, we've had our first meeting in, like, I think March, talking about all these things. And then all of a sudden we've got lockdown.
Yeah.
And, we're seeing this different learning environment, we're seeing different inequities, we're seeing different accessibility needs. And in my case specifically, as someone who uses a computer, so assistive technology, since I was 8, to do schoolwork, um, my computer died within the first week
Oh
of lockdown.
no.
So I did not have a device to actually learn during that time. And it was so interesting too, because I don't reflect on this enough. But we were one of the first groups to be kind of talked to around how education was going to roll out for the rest of the country for our students. And the hard packs came from our group. The sending out modems and computers came from our group.
Oh
And
wow.
you bet the very next meeting we had with Minister Hipkins, which was, I think, maybe a week or 2 weeks after that initial meeting, before that lockdown or I think it was during lockdown took place. So we're still all in lockdown. We're having this meeting with Minister Hipkins. And you can just imagine, not even 18, I was 17 at the time. And I was just going ham. I was like, hey, look at this minister. Like, I can't even learn because I don't have a device right now. I can't keep up to date with my internals. Like I don't have these accessibility needs, and also the mental health that's happening too, as this year 13 who, thought their last year at high school was going to be crystal perfect, as every, person thought for 2020.
Yeah.
And so that kind of springboarded me on to really look at how disabled people interact with the I guess education system, and then once again kind of going into tertiary. So I was very lucky that, as we've talked about, I come from this really rural community that, teachers do support you in the sense that everyone knows everyone. So why wouldn't the teacher support you? Because they probably know your mum. And growing up, with a laptop, it was very weird because I was always this kid in school, the only person in the classroom with a laptop, which would be so foreign to think about now because you look at lecture halls and everyone's got a laptop. And so I was doing a lot of externals and exams already on my laptop and having someone kind of come in. But, I was kind of given these great accessibility needs, both at primary and in high school. But when I hit tertiary, I was kind of seeing this kind of difference of like this really hands-off approach, not also disregarding the awesome mahi that Disability Services does at Otago. They're absolutely wonderful. But I think for me, coming from this rural community, I just kind of expected a real real
Hands on.
hands-on like
Hands on.
community
Yeah.
feel. And then I'm seeing, once again, we're still in this digital transition era of kind of consuming education. We're kind of looking at lecture recordings. And then it wasn't until I think semester 2 I was actually able to get the correct keyboard for me to do exams at university because the keyboards, like I hadn't thought twice about
Yeah.
the keyboard specifics for my exams in semester one because I'm like, oh, I'll just get a really good, like it'll be fun. But no, the keyboard that I'd gotten wasn't good for like my hands. Yeah, so things like that, I'd started kind of talking to them about it, and then once again, it was kind of interesting and foreign to ask for extensions because I'm a person with invisible disabilities, but also quite physical. That you'd look at me and you go, "Oh, she's just, a healthy girl, right?"
Yeah. Yeah.
And it was really difficult to ask for those extensions or ask for support, ask for help, because you're also got this internal ableism. You're gaslighting yourself, like, why do I need this requirement? Like, why can't I just get on with it, as all my other friends are doing. And I think there was also an interesting dynamic. And because of the mahi that I'd done at that YAG, it was 2 terms. So it was during my 2020, so year 13, and my first year, 2021, being a student. And I kind of finished that up and I was like, oh, I can't leave this kind of education mahi. Like, it doesn't feel right for me. And that's when I learned about NDSA, so the National Disabled Students Association, and they had just started in about 2021, and it kind of springboarded from that kind of COVID area of 2020. And I was like, I'll put my name in the hat, I'll hop on and try and hope for general exec. So I did in 2022. So my second year at university, I was on as general exec, and it was kind of cool too because I'm this kind of young kid, and the people in there had been quite seasoned advocates in education, and they had these incredible experiences, but they also had these incredible connections. Like, at one point we were talking to this person from StudyLink, and I was like, I never imagined to be talking to this person about accessibility when filling out this form, and those kind of things. And then that kind of springboard, and towards the end of my general exec term, I was like, I still can't leave this. Like, it doesn't feel right to leave this. So me and my co-president Sean put our heads together, and we're like, well, he was like, hey, do you want to run as co-pres? Because I was running for president whether he liked it or not. So yeah, he's awesome. He's absolutely incredible. Anyone who's able to be friends with him is absolutely lucky. He has so much love and compassion for every single person he meets, and the determination he has is incredible. So big mahi to him. So yeah, we've been co-presidents for 2 years, and once again, we were connecting with these awesome organisations and institutions like NZQA and TEC, so the Tertiary Education Commission, and Ministry for Education. And what I think is really cool about this, while also tumultuous at times, was that as I started that co-presidency, so it's kind of just been completed halfway through this year, so it took about a year and a half, NDSA and NZQA and TEC was able to come together and create this report on the disabled student experience at tertiary education. And they kind of started off with having a survey, first a literature review by our assistant researcher at the time, who was able to kind of collate and pull out all of this information that was happening. And we found that a lot of the experience and information that had kind of been drawn on only had about 20 respondents, or about 8 or 20. So we're like, how are we going to get people to buy it, let alone like in New Zealand too, because a lot of these studies are also from overseas, right?
That's right, yeah.
So it was quite the challenge. So after kind of like looking at this lit review, we're like, right, let's do a survey. So we had about 230 plus people fill out the survey, which is insane.
It's crazy,
crazy. And that was a really great way to kind of create like a snapshot of what's happening in our tertiary sector at the moment. And then from that, we were like, okay, let's do focus groups. So the focus groups didn't pick off as much as we would have liked them to. And I think that kind of comes around to the time that we held it, which was right before that exam period. So everyone would have been crunching, or everyone might have had like a flare up in their own way, with chronic conditions like myself. So yeah, completely understandable. And then that kind of springboarded on to, we wanted this out before the end of that year. So then our members across the motu, so our chapters, were able to use it and leverage it with their own institution, especially with the disability action plans and the learner success plans that are at these universities, but we hadn't really taken into account that we were undertaking this during an election year. So that meant that while this was previously signed off by other ministers, that transition period that was happening when we finished up in November of the focus groups and those surveys couldn't really be signed off until the start of next year. So we had to kind of compromise with the institutions, and we were able to get an A3 to present to our members at the start of this year in February of the main snapshot of kind of the percentages in the sense of how many people could access or get barriers or have experienced some kind of ableism within the tertiary sector. So that was great to get that snapshot. But then we officially was able to launch the report that was written in May this year, which is really awesome. And it's really cool to kind of talk about that mahi because it's such a valuable resource, and I just wish more people knew about it and more people read about it. So take a look. You can Google ndsa.org.nz and you'll find our website, and there's like a little bar that says interagency research, and you can find the whole entire journey and then reports and also the accessibility of them. You get summaries, you get gosh, I've got to remember now. you get basically the accessible content on it. Yeah, everything, which is awesome. And by the way, too, it was kind of the first survey that had been paired with New Zealand Sign Language interpretation.
Amazing.
Ministry of Education, which was awesome to see. So big shout out to them because they were able to find funding to do this. Because once again, kind of talking about this, me and Sean and other advocates at NDSA, we haven't really been kind of compensated for our time. Like we do get some kind of koha, but it doesn't actually, we've talked about, it doesn't compensate nor kind of compared to the amount of love and araha that we're doing this mahi for. We're not doing it for the dollar, we're doing it because we want to see change. And also, once again, big shout out to, other organisations that are doing that change, like Achieve, which is an awesome association. And once again, to those main advocates at your local DSA that you do kind of lean on, build that connection with, and are able to advocate with or for you during the time that you can't, which I think is so valuable because, once again, I think it's really important to acknowledge those who are disabled and are advocates and doing study because we are using our voice for the collective, not necessarily always for our experience. But during that time, we're using the voice for others and we're getting burnt out and, we're having flare-ups and we can't complete our study or we need an extension. We can't always advocate for ourselves because we've used it all up, right?
Totally.
So that's kind of the moment and the time that local staff is able to come in and kind of talk to the lecturer or, the TA or whoever's the main kind of contact to kind of help and sort it out, which has been really, really helpful, especially this year for me, halfway through this year. So, I've always been super passionate about education because I think it is the key for society to both improve but also understand other people's experiences. And it has to be in an accessible manner, right? So this year at Otago, I was part of the Welfare and Equity rep for OUSA this year, which is the local students association. And when I run for it last year, one of the main policies that I ran on was a lecture recording and closed captions policy. And similarly enough, the international representative also ran it because closed captions is so overlooked. Like I use closed captions all the time, like on all my media. And I think there was also a recent study done in Ireland that kind of showed that I think it's aged between 18 and 30, or if I remember correctly, about 81% of them are using closed captions on all of their media. So it's no longer just about the accessibility for maybe audio processing or bilingual people. It's actually kind of becoming a tool and a universal design tool that everyone can benefit from. So we kind of ran on that and we were able to get that kind of across the line this year, and we're seeing some of the first drafts come through, but yeah, I'm just really hoping that that closed captions policy still really is cemented, because it's so important that everyone is able to get access to universal lecture recordings, because, we've spoken about it's so expensive to be a student now that you do have to kind of take on that full-time position or that part-time position just to be able to afford to live. Um, so it's not even just about if people are sick. It's also about, people who might be parents that have to
Yeah.
go and pick up their kid at that time that they can't make it. And I think also lecturers or, teaching professionals need to understand lecture recordings is not a diminishing factor of your teaching. It's the way that you're teaching and you're engaging with your students. We are having to look at how we transition more to engagement rather than attendance. And I'm not trying to dismiss that low morale when you do get halfway through the semester and you have those low numbers. But yeah, just know that your students aren't coming because they don't want to. Just know it's probably for a good reason, and they're really not trying to upset you at all. Um, once again, we're young kids, and we're just trying to understand both ourselves, and we're in this really weird predicament in life where we're like, we're part of this community, but are we part of this community? Because, like we're going through so much, both financially, independence, identity, and then learning all on top of it is insane. So, yeah, it's quite the dynamic.
It is quite the dynamic, and and I'm glad you put it out there because we had Hope on here a few months ago, and she spoke about the closed captioning just generically, just generally. So it's really, I think it's a piece of work that's really being pushed, and hopefully, it does come through. But but again, the passion that you showed, there's the same passion that Sean has as well. That it's not about the money, it's about um the aroha and the love that you have for the space here, because even though you're not doing it because of your own experience, but your own experience is what drives that. It'll be hard for me to run into those without lived experiences. I could just, whereas got lived experiences, which then you go, wait a minute, if I've got this lived experience, the collective also has things that I don't see and I don't know about, which drives it, which is really, really beautiful. And as you said, we spoke about all the stuff that you're doing, but in amongst all this, you're also having to go through your health condition, and you also have to study, and you also have to find time to have a love life, and that amongst all that, let's be real, right? Let's be real, Tara, let's blush, but that's real, right? This is still happening, right? This is life is still carrying on. It's not like you can't press pause in other parts of your life. It's just a life is a story, and you put different parts of the story in different phases. That's really, really beautiful. And yeah, I mean, there's so much you can share there, but I just want to leverage again, and I want to talk about some of the cool ways you have been recognized. So, we're not going to talk about the finances. We're going to talk about how you've been recognized by, recently the University of Otago recognized the work that you've done. Festival of the Future recognized the stuff that you've done, and also, you've recently been in the Y25 group as well. So, as you think about that, I know you don't do any of this for those recognition, the recognition. What does it feel like for you when you go with these recognition? I'm not going to use the word accolades because they're not accolades, it's just recognitions of you as a young, and I'm going to use the word young here because it is young. You as a young person have managed to impact, and someone gives you a call, you get the email and go, hey Tara, you're Otago slash Festival of the Future slash the Kiwi Bank, 100 heroes, all those crazy cool things there, which yeah, what I mean, you don't have to go through all of them, but what does that make you feel like?
Honestly, it just makes me feel like that little rural kid who was battling with tall poppy syndrome every day, who was not getting recognised. Um, and I think that's also part of the reason why, for a very long time, I didn't, I guess, really feel the recognition. Even though I might have been getting that recognition, I didn't really feel it. And um, yeah, going back to being awarded that at University of Otago about a month or so ago, that was massive to me because, I did hold a bit of resentment for my time at university for a little bit, but this year really changed my perspective. I was around a really cool group of people doing mahi that we all really were passionate about, really excited about. I really had a lot of love for campus. I was coming on every day. I was able to use the mobility parking, which was incredible because, also for finances, right? I was flatting out in Caversham, which is about a 10-15
Yeah.
minute drive away from campus. But once again, I loved it out there. It was about a 2.5k walk to St Clair, which was absolutely beautiful. And we had this gorgeous view of Dunedin. But yeah, it was it was really moving when I had reflected on it that night. I'm like, wow, I've spent almost, well, now 4 years of my life down here. And it, like you said, it has been a story. It hasn't come like all crystal clear and gold. And it's definitely had its moments where it's been quite the challenge to stay down there and also stay in different situations that I was in. Um, but yeah, I've made it through, and I think yeah, more than ever right now, as I've kind of talked about, I'm trying to transition into what brings me joy now and what do I actually want to be doing. Do I want to be doing a 9 to 5? And if I am doing a 9 to 5, like, am I going to be doing it at a place or, doing the mahi that I'm enjoying? So, yeah, I think I've really transitioned into the sense of gratitude and kind of longing to kind of hopefully take a step back, but also, kind of mentioning Sean again, he thinks I'm only going to last like 6 months of taking a step back. So the bets are on. But yeah, it's been quite cool to get those recognitions. Like, I think I don't talk about it a lot. And it was a couple nights ago. So the night after I'd finished my exam, a group of us had gone out, just to have some fun. We didn't expect it to be too much fun, but I think it was the first time that a few of them actually asked me about those things, not in a sense of like they hadn't asked it from me before, but that they cared and they didn't want to ask it throughout the year in the sense of like, being put offish, right? Because there are always people that you're going to look up to in life, and
Yeah.
there are questions that you're going to want to ask, and you don't always want to ask them because you're so self conscious, or you think that, oh my gosh, should they always get asked this or that kind of thing. And yeah, so a couple nights ago, yeah, I'm just in this really reflective state too, and I really loved what you said at the start about anti goals, and yeah, it's really cool that we are kind of reflecting a lot in our lives now, and kind of a couple nights ago reflecting on what's happening and getting asked those questions that I wouldn't normally get asked about. Like the only word that really comes to mind is insane. Like it's insane the trajectory of my life. Like I'm only 22 and I've had so many different experiences and met so many different people, and it's been absolutely incredible. And I have so much aroha for absolutely every person I've crossed paths with, regardless of, um, you know, where things may have ended up. So, yeah, I'm feeling a lot of appreciation and a lot of gratitude, and really looking forward to kind of, I guess, next year and stepping into a new sense of self, a new sense of life. So, yeah, that's where I'm sitting at the moment. Yeah.
And I think this is an important time for, you've spoken of all this amazing mahi that you've done, but I think this is a great time for you to also, and for us to acknowledge that all this comes from somewhere. And the some ways here. This is not a brain decision. This is a heart decision. I remember when I had my PhD supervisor many, many years ago, and he said to me, "There's two kinds of people in the world. There are brain people and there's heart people." And he said to me, "You always want to find the heart people because they are the ones that will not let you down, because they come with a purpose. And not to say the brain people let you down, but they work the processes, and sometimes process and heart don't work. So, and it's quite clear to see why Sean and I also think that in 6 months' time, your whole world will be a little bit different, and you'll be like, "Let's bring on the next adventure," which is really cool. But I use the word adventure in a way that's an adventure of meaningfulness, and that's really beautiful. And I hope you know that. I hope that even without the accolades that your mahi is recognized. Like I said before we jumped on the recording, I have spoken to. I mean, I'm very lucky that I have a lot of young people that have both visible and invisible disabilities that come and speak to me about their time and at university, and the stuff they tell me is, I always think about, none of this stuff would happen if it wasn't for people like yourself, or even the great advocacy that people like Melissa Letherby and Co do as well, because people need to understand that they're fighting against the system, and
Mhm.
so it's really beautiful to hear that. So yeah, big mahi to you, and all the invisible people that do all the work behind the scenes as well. And also, but also a mihi to all anyone that has a disability, both seen and unseen, that actually take the challenge of going to a tertiary provider because already is a win. So yeah, best of me to anyone out there that's listening. Yeah, so thank you for the work that you do, Tara. Thank you for the work that you do. But I want to ask you a question. In amongst all this amazingness, how do you have fun, Tara? What is your fun? Where does the fun? What does fun look like for Tara?
Oh, well, I'm such a nerd, right? Like we're on this kind of train. Um, I currently have my Nintendo Switch next to me. I'm a massive Switch player. I love Disney Dreamlight Valley. Disney Dreamlight Valley, which is so fun. It's just like this village game, but with Disney characters. And I swear I'm not a Disney adult. I just love any games
Hi,
that have
no
like
no
a lot of
judgment,
color.
no judgment, no judgment.
Yeah, it's great. It's great. I play so many different games. Yeah, that I also love to be creative, like any sense of creativity. Like I grew up sewing and I'm kind of refining that love for sewing last summer. So I'm really excited to kind of make some more pieces this summer. Um, and yeah, I have this beautiful puppy. We've had him for a year now, but he's a year and a couple months old. And his name's Fonzie, and he's absolutely beautiful, and we love him to bits. And also, I have this massive love for travel. So I had pretty much traveled all of the South Island by the time that I was 8.
Oh,
So I was kind of brought up learning that you kind of have to get to know your own country and your own issues in said country before learning about any other country. And I think also that time was also this kind of sweet bliss of like we didn't really have total social media, so we weren't kind of having this oversaturation of content and kind of
yeah.
influx of things that were happening around. And so that kind of has gone on along with I guess life in the sense of I've always wanted to travel. And the summer before I went to university, me and my now fiance, we did a massive trip of the North Island. So technically, this means that the only places I haven't been is Gisborne and the north of Auckland. And I really want to go up to Cape Reinga and I really want to go and do the Coromandel properly and get a kayak, like just go around there. But yeah, kind of bridging on that, we've always kind of cemented that every year we had to go overseas once a year. So we went to Australia, the good old Australia. We went to Vietnam last year for my birthday, which was absolutely incredible. Best place ever, like would 100% recommend. It's such a cool place. Like if I was ever an expat, like catch me in Vietnam. Incredible. And yeah, just been in Samoa, beautiful, beautiful place. Like the people are absolutely lovely. Yeah, it was really wonderful to be there and kind of for looking on. In a few months, we've decided to head over to Europe, which is quite a big jump from the old Samoa and those kind of places. So yeah, we're hoping to do a couple months over there and also spend some time with some family that are going to come over. His family is going to come over, and we're going to do a bit of a cruise, which is nice. So yeah, we're just making sure that in that toxic Google Calendar of events and of meetings that there is those times carved out for not only yourself but to connect with other people, even if it's literally just a study date of just sitting there. Like you don't have to spend money on going to a cafe and getting a brunch. Just finding some time for not only you but others to really foster those relationships. But yeah, those are what bring me joy.
I love that because it's important for anyone, including myself and listeners, to go, yeah, everyone does all this amazing work, but if you don't fill your cup,
Mm.
you don't follow joy. None of that happens. None of that happens. It's really awesome to hear that whether you're a Disney adult or not, I'm just saying, or whether you whether you're
Well, I
traveling,
haven't been to Disney World yet, so am I a Disney adult?
yet is the keyword, right? Yet is the keyword. Go to Disneyland Paris all over. Tara, where are you? Oh, we've left in Disneyland Paris and then Japan and then the mothership in the United States, Florida. Here we come. That is really cool. No,
Yeah.
beautiful, beautiful. That's so exciting. Tara, we've been chatting for almost 1.5 hours, which is pretty
Whoa.
awesome. And we haven't
Sorry.
even touched. Hey, don't be sorry at all. Don't be sorry at all. We haven't even touched on all the other things that you do in your life, and might actually get you on again at some other point to talk about that. But I am mindful that hey, you are heading away to another trip tomorrow to the much more exotic Hamilton tomorrow. So before we round off, I'd love to ask you one last question. And our podcast is called Baskets of Knowledge. And
Mhm.
every week or every guest we have on our podcast, we invite them to share a piece of knowledge to put into our basket or kitty. So for myself, for our guests, I mean, you've shared so much knowledge here, but is there any one piece of knowledge that from any part of your life that you'd like to share?
Yeah, definitely. I think it really comes down to the places that you have the most challenges are the places you have the most to give. And that really resonates with me. I don't know if I made that up or read that somewhere, but it just kind of came to me in like year 12. And I've always kind of thought about it. And, I think that kind of comes back to the conversations that we've woven today around the sense of, the places that I have had the most challenges. I'm like, well, someone's got to do it. Just do it. And once again, it doesn't have to be this massive thing. Like I think right now we are seeing this not necessarily oversaturation, but there's a lot of push around activism, and you have to go to everything. You have to be educated on absolutely everything. Um, Honestly, just take a break to be a kid for a little bit, but also kind of educate yourself in a sense that, you know, don't try and put the weight of the world on your shoulders. I am really worried that some kids are going to think that, this glorification of activism without the downside of burnout is so real. Like understanding that and how you get out of that. Um, so yeah, just be a kid for a little bit. That's my only advice. Yeah.
I love that. There's actually two pieces of advice here. There's, where you find the greatest challenges where where you can, where you will
Yeah.
really, really find your prosperous there. But the second one, I think, is actually not just for young people. I think it's also for adults. I think it's okay for you to find the inner kid in you and just enjoy life a little bit. And as you said before, we had Jay on the podcast a few weeks ago, and he said the same thing. He goes, the world, everyone just thinks that they have to do everything, they have to focus on. So, for example, everyone's worried about climate change, everyone's about the Donald Trump. I mean, that doesn't affect us. Things like that. The Palestine, and if you're not seen to be saying anything, then you're a bad person. And as you said, and he said as well, it's like it doesn't have to go that big. You just focus on what you can do in your little worlds, and one of those things there, and that's okay. You don't have to have the pressure of everything because, as you said before, you still need to be a kid and enjoy life.
100%.
Beautiful, beautiful. That is outstanding, outstanding knowledge there. Any last words, Tara, before I say goodbye to you?
Oh, just thanks so much for having me on. And to be honest, like this was such a great conversation. I don't need a journal tonight. I've done my reflecting. So yeah,
Beautiful.
I also look forward to, watching this back in a few years' time and actually see where I ended up and where my reflections have landed. So I think it's, not only the practice of kind of doing this, but anyone can do this. It's, I'm not special. Anyone can do this. So yeah, don't forget that. So yeah, thank you so much.
No worries. Thank you. Thank you so much for jumping on. And even though you might not think you're special, we think you're pretty special, a special human being. So thank you so
Thank
much.
you.
Thank you for jumping on. We started with the age, talking about you at the age of 5 to where you're right now in each one of those, at each stage in your life. You still have to be you still have to grow as a young person. And each one of those stages, you've had challenges, that you've taken on, and things have worked out, and we haven't spoken things that haven't worked out. There's things that haven't worked out as well in your world. We just spoke about the stuff that works out, but there's things that didn't work out, and there were tears and all that kind of stuff there. But thank you for choosing to spend 11/11/2024 with us. And I remember that date when you get your PhD.
Maybe one day. We'll see.
We'll see exactly one day. We're not saying next year. It could be in 10 years time, but we
Exactly.
never know.
I could
We
be
never know.
70. Who knows?
Exactly. Yeah. There's no time frames on PhDs.
Yeah.
Beautiful. To our listeners out there, thank you so much for jumping on. Hopefully you've enjoyed this conversation. I know I have. I know I learned a lot, and hopefully you've learned a lot. And if you haven't, go back and listen again because you've obviously fallen asleep, which is not ideal. So have a listen and pick out something that resonates with you. But till next time, don't forget to keep smiling. Don't forget to find something to make you happy, and most of all, don't forget to put something to your past knowledge. Ka kite, bye. Be safe. Bye, everybody. Peace.
Thank you for listening to Baskets of Knowledge.
Yeah, we hope that you found something useful to put into your basket of knowledge. And as we said before, remember to put something little into your baskets of knowledge every week.
And as always, feel free to like, comment, and share this podcast. Thanks, everybody. Bye.